Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this new session, new edition of BookBytes on Salam Media. I'm your host, Shafinaaz Hassim, and it's great to once again be able to celebrate more of our local writing at what is the end of this pandemic year. We had the wonderful opportunity of looking at quite a number of the creative efforts that came out of this year. And once again, we're going to be treated with some beautiful local content, local writing by a writer who we have hosted before, who's given us such joy and such entertainment through her work. The great thing about, celebrating local writing is really about having that window into the life and the work of our local writers, but also reflecting back. Our writing reflects back to who we are as South Africans, who we are as Muslims. It really is a celebration as well as a mirror. Earlier this year, at the very first session or the first season of BookBytes, we interviewed author Raashida Khan when she launched her short story collection, Your Voice, My Strength. And back then she hinted that she would be working on a new novel, or that she was working on a new novel. In the interim, I had read her very first debut novel, the award-winning novel Mirror Cracked, and absolutely loved getting to know her characters. We're about to talk about her latest offering, The Cursed Touch. I'll just give you a little bit about Raashida before we welcome her onto the show. Raashida Khan is a 50-something South African Indian Muslim woman living in Johannesburg. She has two grown sons who no doubt bring her great joy and possibly inspiration as well. As I mentioned, she's the author of the novel Mirror Cracked, which won the Minara Aziz Hassim debut award. And she has a sequel to that novel called The Fragrance of Forgiveness. Raashida's got a short story collection, a collection of poetry, and various short stories in different anthologies during the course of the last few years of writing. But more especially, we'll be talking about The Cursed Touch, which is such a gripping, such a beautifully written novel. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Raashida to the show. Welcome, Raashida. It's so lovely to finally get to talk about this new offering that you've got for us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always a pleasure chatting to you, Shafinaaz, and thank you for having me. Yes, I'm very excited about the new book.
Well, welcome, and I hope that, congratulations once again, and I hope that this creative spirit is just, there's a fountain flowing from where this comes from, because I celebrate that, I truly do, as a writer and as a reader.
Fantastic.
What's the response?
How's your response? Well, I think as readers and writers, we feed off each other consciously or subconsciously. So yeah, I always like to, and I always loved books and reading. But after I wrote, whenever I held a book after I published my first novel, and then I realized, oh my God, it's not just a book I'm holding. It's the author's innermost, the author's blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm so honored to read, as opposed to just being before, when you didn't actually understand the whole process. So yes, it's a wonderful thing. And thank you to all the writers out there. I think they've inspired us the most.
And it's right what you're saying. It's very mind-bending to, as we've always been readers, and then to take on the writing process, to suffer the cuts of being an editor and a writer of your work, and then to come back and see the expanse of creativity and thinking that comes from doing both. And I wish more people the journey of writing as we've undertaken. What's the response being to The Cursed Touch? How's it been received? When exactly did it launch? And what can you tell us?
So I launched mid-September, and so far the response has been great. Early readers, I think bar maybe one negative comment, I wouldn't even say a whole review, I've had very, very positive feedback, great reviews to date. People are really liking the story. And I must confess, because my topics are controversial, I'm always a bit nervous putting them out there, because you never know what the reception is going to be. And for my first book, I thought Mirror Crack probably dealt with the most controversial topic. But surprisingly, there were a few women especially who reacted to the character of Sandra, because especially in the beginning of the book, she's not a very likable character. She's anything but likable, in fact.
Right,
So
right.
people didn't resonate with her at all. And someone even went to the extent of saying, are you sure this is okay? I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting her exactly, but the implication was that, did I really want to portray women as such? And I took that comment because I always say, please give me honest feedback. So I responded, and I asked her a day or two later. I said, I'm absolutely fine with your comment, and thank you for that. I will consider it moving forward. But can I ask you a question? And if you'll be honest with me, so I asked her. I said, what if this character was male? And we had all of these characteristics, the ruthlessness, the
The
determinedness,
infidelity.
exactly all of that. How does that go down when it's a male character? And then she did admit, she said, yes, you're right, that it gives me something to think about, because yes, we are more forgiving of men, so qualities that Sandra is displaying in a man, they would say, oh, he's such a leader, and the end justifies the means, and all those kinds of justifications. That is, it's okay when it's a man. And when it's a woman, we as women sometimes hold ourselves up to higher standards, hold other women up to higher standards. And that in itself is something to consider. And I think if that conversation starts happening, then I'm very pleased about that.
And I think it's important to have what's so-called negative comment, because it really means people are
Oh yes,
engaging with your material, and
for
it's
sure.
really constructive in its own way, no matter what voice it comes with. Let's give readers a bit of a taste. I'm just going to read a small bit of the blurb.
Sure.
So you start by saying, we are the products of our experiences. Denying them does not negate them. And I think it's a very powerful line to introduce the book, because it's absolutely about holding up the mirror to ourselves and asking
Mhm.
ourselves how self-righteous we are versus how capable we are of doing what your protagonist does. I mean, there's a love-hate relationship with Sandra, because you don't want to be her, but at the same time, you wonder the power that she holds is something that's very sort of ingratiating for a lot of people. Sandra is a powerful executive for whom career is paramount at the expense of all else, including her husband and son. When an ill considered affair with John, and in turn leads to him taking his life, the fallout is catastrophic. John's grieving mother, Hannah, uncovers the truth, and a confrontation between the women results in far reaching consequences. Overnight, Sandra's charmed life vanishes, and it seems that she is cursed to ruin everything she touches. So you touch on the cursed touch. Alone and in despair, she is forced to confront her past, a past she has denied and sought to bury, along with the girl that she once was. I'm not reading the full blur, but already it's a powerful extract taking us into the nitty gritty of the story. And I must say, while I did have this love hate relationship with Sandra, my heart was warmed to how authentic and how real and how nuanced your characters are. So let's go to Sandra in particular and the dualities that she presents.
Mhm.
I mean, you spoke about um, how she represents herself, but she's also dealing with trauma from her past. So a lot of it is trauma response, what we would call trauma responses, and you do it so beautifully. I know that we often ask writers, what's your inspiration? I want to go deeper than I'm not going to say what's your inspiration for writing Sandra, but a broader sort of in a way, a moral duty to represent Sandra in the way that you have without judging her. Tell us about that process.
So I think it's various things that come into play. One of them is a recognition that nobody's perfect. We ourselves are not perfect. We make mistakes all the time. Consciously, unconsciously, deliberately, we're going about our lives hurting people. We're going about our lives doing the wrong thing, or things that we know are wrong. We go ahead and do that. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that any person is completely irredeemable. It doesn't mean that any one person is all bad or all good. I don't think any person like that exists. So there's a bit of both in us. And I mean, definitely that old saying about good people do bad things and bad people do good things, that's very true. And I think also a lot of my, one of the core themes that will always come through in my books is identity. And identity, yes, it's important to know who we are, but it's also important to recognize who we are, to really recognize our true selves, and then to learn to love and accept that person. And it can be a very difficult thing to do. It can be quite a judgmental, anybody looks at themselves. I think our natural tendency is to always judge ourselves. And, it's a very, very difficult path to tread, because as a person, you want to grow, you want to develop, you want to be better, you want to do better than you were, you want to be better than you were yesterday. I think that's one of our core driving forces, I would imagine. But at the same time, it's not as easy as that. So yeah, there's a lot of dualities in Sondra's character, and I think that's because there's a lot of duality in us, in each of us.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, very often what happens is, in different circumstances, we present different people. And I don't think any of those presentations are false or incorrect, So people will see me in my home context with my family and, my in-laws, or with my husband, and I'm behaving in a certain way. And when I'm with my friends, I might be a little bit freer, I might be a little bit, naughty. But doesn't mean that those two things can't exist simultaneously, or that any one is better than the other. So
Absolutely.
I think we complex as human beings. All our characters are complex, and I love writing about characters. I'm sure you recognize that when you read my writing. I love writing about complex and interesting characters. I'm one of those people who I can never ever tell, is it plot that drives my characters, or is it characters that drives the plot? It's such a difficult one for me to answer freely. But yes, Sondra's character is very interesting, and I'm glad that she resonated with you. I think she's been resonating with a lot of people. As I said, I've had very positive feedback about the book. Alhamdulillah.
So it really is the dark and light that we accept within ourselves, and it's that honesty with which you write, Sondra, that resonates for absolutely everyone, whether we believe we're capable of certain things or not. And even then, it really takes being honest with ourselves. So, so Sondra, I mean, when I look at her relationship with that beautiful intern John, who comes into the space, she is this power woman. She's power driven. She's closing deals. She's always the one clicking her fingers and getting what she wants. But John kind of does have a certain power over her, whether we like to, whether she would admit it or not, even though it plays out in such a way that he turns out in a way to be, the incident turns out to be her nemesis, because really, his suicide then forces her to reflect on so many things. And even then, not immediately.
No.
Sondra, and I think that's the humanness of Sondra. She's not always in control, even though she seems to, to be at some point. Yes. So this is another question, and I agree with you. Your characters are nuanced, layered, and beautifully written. My next question is, at what point, riding this high wave, do we say enough is enough? I don't want to be this person, because she celebrates who she is while she's successful. And I think back to her conversation with her husband in the coffee shop. It's almost as if he's wondering if he could believe her, because she's a changed person. She has these reflections. Like, for him, it's sort of not that old story. So now the clash with people from her past and people from her present who have experienced her. Let's talk about the clash of character, a little bit about that, and how does she redeem herself?
So, it's interesting that you say, yes, it was the suicide that eventually led her to start, discovering herself again and reflecting on who she is. And she takes a long, hard look at herself. Again, I don't think necessarily it would have happened. It only happened because David, her husband, says something to the effect that, I don't even know who you are anymore. Have you taken a look at yourself? Do you, and it's clear that the image he sees, he does not like. He cannot bear to be with anymore. So that, I think, is more the impetus for her to start questioning and looking at herself.
Okay.
And start spiraling downward. Ultimately, she's carrying on with life as best as she can. Okay, she's no longer in the family and with her husband, so she's had to move out, and she's carrying on with work and things. But she suddenly realizes that everything is not as perfect as she'd like it to be, or she thought it was, and definitely there's something missing in her life. Definitely, the power hungry be all and end all in terms of being the perfect executive and the perfect deal maker. That doesn't cut it. At the end of the day, that is not who we are. That is not who she is, or she thinks maybe she needs to know that there's more to herself than that. So that is a very, very that's a turning point in her life, and she needs to then question, and she goes on both a physical and spiritual, emotional journey to rediscover herself, to rediscover her past. So she goes back to her hometown, and that in itself is a huge step for her. Previously, she'd never gone back to Durban. She's now living in Johannesburg. She studied in Cape Town. She's now living in Johannesburg. And she would never have dreamt of going back to Durban. Even if there were family trips planned, she'd get out of them. Even if there were work meetings that she had to do, she'd fly in the morning and fly back the same day. She tried to wipe out as much of that part of her life as she could. She just never acknowledged it. I mean, she was married to David for almost 20 years, and in all that time, she never spoke about her past to him at all. In fact, in one of the conversations I think David's having with Hannah, he says, I really thought it was something terrible, like maybe her father had killed her mother and was in jail or something. I mean, it was that kind of complete denial of the past. She never spoke about it, and even when they were getting married, or she and his mother was saying, what about your family? Aren't you inviting anybody? She had nobody to. She just was completely independent. She thought she didn't need anyone, and she was fine as she was.
But what's interesting though is that David breaking away from her is something that she can't deal with. She wants them back. She wants her family back. And so you suddenly see she's not as ruthless, cold, and detached as we would imagine. She actually wants her family back. She's not just willing to cut her losses and move on, so to speak. What I truly appreciate is also her connection with her relatives from the past, her sisters, her stepmother, and surprisingly, an unlikely friendship and sisterhood with John's mother, with now that he's passed on, with Anna, who actually comes to confront her and is also one of the catalysts for all of the drama that ensues. Sisterhood, grieving together, loss and finding, is a theme that's always resonated in each of our lives. And so that also speaks to us in so many ways. And it's another powerful piece of trajectory of characters through your novel.
Yes. So I completely, I'm so blessed to have so many wonderful women in my life, so I'm just blessed to be surrounded by strong and caring, compassionate women. And for me, it's a big part of who I am. The bonds with my sisters and my friends and my the female people in my life. And it's a strange journey that Sandra and Hannah embark on, because they start off as arch enemies. They start off hating each other, and it's an understanding that they both have to go through, or it's an acceptance that they both have to go through, that for each of them to heal from the trauma that they've experienced, for each of them to heal, they have to reach out to the other, or they have to reach out to somebody else. And I think that's a fundamental understanding of life as well, that if we want to be happy, we can't be alone. And studies have proved this as well, that if you want to be happy, or if you want to be satisfied and get joy in your life, you need to help somebody else, or you need to help another. And even if it's just taking care of an animal, that gives you joy, that gives you fulfillment. Or if you can reach out and help another person, that is very, very sustaining. And I've experienced that in my own life, and from other people as well. I think people find that is something that really gives their life meaning. So I think with Sandra and Hannah, it's a very, very tenuous. First of all, it's quite a blow up when they first meet. I mean, it's a huge cadenza. I mean, it's because Sandra's son overhears this conversation between them. It's not a conversation. I would call it a fight.
Confrontation.
That's when everything unravels. And actually Hannah tries to reach out to her twice, before Sandra realizes who she is and the role she's played, or the role she's played in that other woman's sadness and that other woman's journey. So it's also a matter of each of them taking responsibility for themselves and their actions, especially with Sandra. Initially Sandra's like, it's not my problem. It's not my fault. I mean, she literally says that to David. I can't be blamed. I can't be held responsible for somebody doing something foolish. I didn't put the gun in his hand. And she says that flippantly. But that's exactly what she was feeling. She's faultless or blameless in this. And that is a huge, it takes a huge journey and a huge, it's not an easy path that she has to go through to actually unravel that feeling and to go 180 degrees the other way, or 360 even, when she takes responsibility and then she reaches out to the person who she's hurt to see how she can help, and in turn being helped by her. So it's a wonderful thing that the relationship develops between the two of them. It really is amazing for both of them. And it's people say Allah puts people in your path that you need at the time. We don't realize it, but it's amazing how people come into our lives at certain points in our lives for a reason, and it's for us to recognize that and to be true to that person or to yourself, as you can see yourself reflected of the other person.
Absolutely. Raashida, I'm going to ask you to give us a short extract of your choice, so we can get a taste of your writing from The Cursed Touch.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so this is my most exciting part, of course, because I always say I like my writing to speak for itself. So I'm going to choose right at the beginning, because hopefully there won't be too many spoilers at that point. So this is the book, The Cursed Touch, and it's available on Amazon as an ebook, from some exclusive books and from me directly. Also some online stores and quite a few of the Islamic bookstores. So look out for it. So this is on page 34 that I've chosen. The citrusy scent caressed the edges of her subconscious, accompanied by an image that drifted in her silent thoughts. The fragrance of her mother's hand cream was as vivid and as real from all those years ago as it had been for her when she was a young girl. Beryl had always squirted a little in Sandra's palm too. She remembered sitting at the kitchen table at their home in Sydenham, a coloured suburb close to the city centre of Durban, doing homework while her mother cooked and chatted merrily. The first 13 years of Sandra's life were happy and carefree. She was the illegitimate child of a businessman, Abdul Karim, and was raised by Beryl, who doted on her. Beryl had worked as a bookkeeper for Abdul. This had led to an affair that lasted all of Sandra's 13 years, as well as the 2 before her birth. Beryl was young and naive. She had become captivated by the good-looking, charming, rich man. When she fell pregnant, he asked what she wanted to do, though his feelings were made clear. If she was to have the child, the boy or girl would be raised Muslim. Beryl wanted the child but had resisted raising her as Muslim, much to Abdul's ire. Beryl had eventually agreed and allowed Sandra to attend madrasa to learn about and to practice the Islamic religion. But Beryl also taught Sandra about Christianity and took her to church upon occasion, particularly at Christmas and Easter. They had compromised and said that when Sandra was ready, she could decide which faith she would choose. When Abdul arrived for his weekly conjugal visits with Beryl, Sandra had to stay quietly in her room and not see him. Glimpses of his sports jacket or pullover jersey was all she saw of him through the keyhole as he passed her room before disappearing down the passage to her mother's room. A hollow thud as the door closed was all she heard until she fell asleep. When she woke in the mornings, he would be gone.
Brilliant. It's very easy to empathize with Sandra in that space when you read about her childhood and the kind of struggles that she faced and the trauma that she faced during that time, and the lack of love which you see her sort of trying so hard to get during the course of her life. And so overall, a beautiful characters and how they engage each other. You obviously have a very special gift for noting and noticing, what people are made of and what makes people. And I
Well,
know
I
that
mean,
that
as
will
a writer,
carry.
you know all about that, Shafinaaz. As a writer, we can't help but observe life. We can't help. I mean, I read one of your old posts, and you said how you like to watch people at car washes. I mean, I love sitting at a coffee shop and pretend I'm flipping through a magazine or something, and I can watch the beautiful people of Joburg go by or wherever I am. That's what makes it interesting for us. I can be entertained by that for hours.
So what we're actually doing is giving people a little bit of a writer's secret, and they're going to feel a little more self-conscious around us. Because I have a friend who is a dentist who always said that people are self-conscious because he thinks that people, think he's watching their teeth or looking at their teeth all the time. So here
Yes.
we go.
Mm.
Um, I sincerely hope that many people will be picking up this book and your previous novels because you write beautifully, but also because your message is so resounding. And these conversations are important not just for entertainment sort of reasons, because books are entertaining, but also because I think your books have the potential to carry people through certain traumas,
Mm.
to heal. And I really believe that this is your gift in many ways, and I wish you all the best with this book and with future writing. And it's once again such a pleasure to be able to present your work on BookBytes. All the best for that, and thank you for sharing your work.
Jazakallah, Shafinaaz. As always, it's wonderful to talk to you, and thank you for having me. I know it was just a few months, just fortuitous, or just happens to be that my two books came out this year. I think I'm going to be taking a break next year. I need a bit of a break. It's not easy writing challenging novels, but yes, we shall see how it goes. Jazakallah again, and all the best to you too as well. I mean, I love your writing as well. I'm inspired by you. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope the inspiration finds you as soon as you're ready for it. We have a lot to enjoy in the meantime while you're taking your break. Assalamu alaikum wa
Jazakallah.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum
And
assalam wa
so
rahmatullah.
And so that was Raashida Khan on her new novel, The Cursed Touch. And I honestly enjoyed the novel. I enjoyed getting to know her characters. And I really believe that every South African should read this book and read other of her works to really understand and to hold the mirror up to yourself as to who we are, the dark and light of who we are, and enjoy the beauty of this presentation for now, for the future, for really understanding everything it is to be human. Thank you once again for watching the show, and we hope to bring you more local writing in future editions of Book Bites on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.